Okay, this is to cover sections 4.3. And in this section, what we're going to do is now we're going to go ahead and start multiplying out fractions. And when we multiply, we're going to make sure that everything is in simplest form. So let's start with number 2. So number 2 in 4.3, I have negative 2 over 3 multiplied it out by 5 over 4. The first step is to always rewrite it as one fraction. So I'm going to rewrite it as negative 2 times 5 over 3 times 4. Okay, now the next step is what we did in section 4.2. What can we do to factor out so we can get something to divide out to 1? Well, I can see this 4, we can get a 2 out of the bottom because 4 is 2 times 2 is 4. So if I rewrite that, so I'm going to rewrite it as negative 2 times 5. I didn't change anything on the top, but on the bottom is 3 times. I'm going to rewrite the 4 as 2 times 2. Now we know our 2's will divide out to 1's. And I look to see I can't get a 5 out of the bottom, so there's nothing else I can do. So the top remains as a 5, and at the bottom I get to multiply to 3 times 2, which is the 6, and don't forget the negative. Don't forget the negative. And that is your final answer. All right, so let's go ahead and try number 3. So number 3 is negative 7 over 3 times, and then I have negative 3 over 11. Okay, so the first thing, step 1, rewrite it as one problem. So I have one fraction over negative 3, and then that's 3 times 11. And you can immediately see these 3's divide out the 1's. So there's not a lot of work there. And this equals, so again, this is negative 7 times a negative 1 over 11. So you need to understand that these two negatives will give you a positive. So the answer to this would be equals 7 over 11. So that gives us a positive answer. So make sure you pay attention when you have two negatives like that. Remember, if they're two negatives or two positives when you're multiplying, that will give you a positive answer. All right, let's try it when we have a variable. So this one will be number 4. So if we have, let me go down here. So we have 66x over top of 37 times, and if we have 83 over 33. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write it as one fraction, 66x times 83 over 37 times 33. Now I'm going to say, what can I start factoring out so I know it will divide out to 1? And if you can see the 66 and the 33, we can get 11 out of each one of those because this is 11 times 6 and this one's 11 times 3. So I'm just going to rewrite it as that. So let me pull this up a little bit. So I'm going to rewrite it as 11 times 6x. That'll give me 66x times 83. Not doing anything with that yet. And then I have 37 times, and this would be 11 times 3. That's how I'm going to express that 33. So now I can see the 11s. They divide out to 1s. So that got rid of that. So when I rewrite this, I need to make note that this right here, I can get a 3 out of that. That's 3 times 2, and then the 3's will cancel out. So if I rewrite that, and I'll do that below. So if I rewrite that one, it'll be, and 11's gone now, it's just a 1 times, which we don't need to include that. So the 6, I'm going to express it as 3 times 2x times 83, all over 37 times 3. Now we have these 3's that divide out to 1, okay? And then if I look at the bottom and the top, I'm not going to get a 37 out of the top stuff. So it looks like we're done with simplifying. So all I need to do at this point is just multiply across. And when you take 83 times 2, you should have the answer of 166. And don't forget the variable x. There's our x right there. Don't drop that off. And that's all over 37. And that is our final answer. The numbers won't always be high and that complicated, but it is for this particular problem, and that's number 4. Okay, so now number 5 is 7a, oops, let me write that again. So it's 7a squared times 1 over 6. Now we need to rewrite that. So remember, anytime you have a whole number, how it's expressed as a fraction, it's 7 over 1. So really technically this would be over 1, like that. So to rewrite it as one fraction, it would be 7, oops, let me change my color. It would be 7a squared times 1 over 1 times 6. So when we multiply that across, and there's nothing we can do to reduce anything any further, so the final answer is just 7a squared over 6, and that's our final answer. Now number 6, they have it, okay, so number 6 is 0 times 5 over 9. I don't care what kind of fraction you have. Whenever it's multiplied by 0, it's always the answer of 0. Even if you have 1,000 times a 0, it's still just 0. Anything multiplied by 0 will give you the answer 0. All right, so let's move on to number 7. Let me clear that out. So number 7, now they give you 3 numbers, or 3 fractions. So we have 2 over 15 times 1/3 times 5 over 4. It's okay. Don't let it confuse you. Just take all of them and rewrite it as one fraction. So the top will be 2 times 1 times 5, all over 15 times 3 times 4. Because the goal is to get something to divide out to 1. All right, so now that I look at the top, I see a 5, and on the bottom, I'm like, well, I know 3 times 5 is 15, so I could get those 5s to cross out. And then if you look on the top, we have a 2, and I know the 4 can, 2 times 2, we can get those 2s to cross out. So let's just rewrite that. So we're going to rewrite as 2 times 1 times 5, nothing going on at the top. But on the bottom, the 15, I'm going to rewrite it as 3 times 5. Now times 3, don't forget your 3, times, and the 4, I'm going to rewrite it as 2 times 2. I'm not changing the value, just the appearance. Now I'm going to look, I'm going to say, okay, I can get these 2's to divide out. I got these 5's to divide out. Now I'm going to collect. On the top, I have, let me scoot this over. So on the top, I have a 1. And on the bottom, it looks like I have a 3 times 3, which is 9. And 9 times 2 is 18. So we have 1 over 18 as our final answer. So it's always important to make sure you're factoring out and reducing it before you multiply anything out. It's harder to multiply and then reduce from that point. So you always want to make sure you're taking care of that step first. All right, so let's move on to number 8. Number 8 is just 1/5 cubed. Don't let that confuse you. All that's saying is take 1/5 times 1/5 times 1/5. And all you're doing is multiplying across, and that would end up being 1 over 5 times 5 times 5 will give you 125. So don't let that confuse you. And that one's number 8. All right, so number 9, there's a problem like this. You have negative 3 over 5 to the 5th power times 1/3. Now you can take a little different approach this way. So this one would be a negative right here, and then we have 3 to the 5th over top of 5 to the 5th. You notice the 5th power will be applied to the numerator and the denominator times 1/3. So what you can do is you just take 3 and raise it to the 5th power in your calculator, and when you do that, let me just write this, so I'm going to negative, you end up with an answer of 243. It says 243. And then when you take 5 to the 5th power, you end up with 3,125. And you're going to multiply that by 1/3. Now, when I see this 3 down here, I'm like, let me see if I can go ahead and take 243. Oops. If I can take 243 and divide it by 3 in a calculator, just to see if I can get a 3 out of it. And when I plug that into the calculator, I end up with 81. So this does break down as 81 times 3, which will help those 3's cancel out. So I'm just going to rewrite that as 81 times 3 times 1, and that's all over. Then we have 3,125 times 3. So we see the 3's will cancel out. And then I made the error of don't forget your negative sign. See the negative here? Don't forget about that. So on top, our final answer is 81 over 3,125. And I know that won't reduce down any further. Okay. So let's now talk about, so that was multiplication. Now we're going to divide fractions. So if you have something like this, 7/10 divided by, and you have 9 over 20. Now, the rule states how you do this is you change that to multiplication, and then you want to make sure you flip this fraction here. It's the reciprocal. That's the terminology. So the first thing you're going to do is rewrite it. You're going to rewrite it as 7/10 times, and then take the reciprocal, which is 20 over 9. You're just changing, making the denominator, and you're now placing it into the numerator. Flip it. So now it's set up. I'm going to rewrite it as one fraction, 10 times 9. And then I'm going to say, how can I factor something out to get something to divide out to 1? Well, I can see this 20 can be expressed as 2 times 10. And the 10's will divide out to 1. So I'll just rewrite it as 7 times 2 times 10, all over 10 times 9. And I can get these 10's to divide out. And I can see I can't reduce this down any further. You're not going to get a 7 or a 2 out of that 9. So I can just go ahead and multiply. And now my answer is 14 over 9. And that's my final answer. So it looks like I want to show you some more problems here. But it looks like I'm starting to run out of time. So I'm going to create a part 2.